Season 2, Episode 2 of Sanctuary, A Witch's Tale doesn't try to shock you. It doesn't rush toward big reveals or dramatic twists. Instead, it does something far more unsettling. It slows down and asks what happens when belief becomes evidence, and truth becomes a burden instead of relief. On the surface, this episode feels simple. Sarah and Maggie discover a sigil at a crime scene. Harper struggles with what she now knows about Lachlan. But beneath that simplicity is an episode about identity, trust, and the danger of knowing too much in a town built on belief. The sigil, what changes everything? The discovery of the sigil is the episode's turning point. Because a sigil is never random. It requires intention, knowledge, and belief. The moment Sarah and Maggie realize the mark was left deliberately, the investigation changes shape. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't panic. This was a message, and that message tells them something far more frightening than a clue ever could. The killer understands the language of witchcraft and knows exactly how powerful symbols are in a place like Sanctuary. The sigil doesn't just point to a suspect. It threatens the town itself. Symbols as weapons. In Sanctuary, belief is currency. A single symbol can fracture trust. It can turn suspicion into certainty. And it can revive fears the town pretends it outgrew. That's what makes the sigil so dangerous. It doesn't accuse anyone directly. It lets people accuse each other. The episode quietly asks an uncomfortable question. Is the killer a true believer acting on conviction? Or someone exploiting belief to create fear? And the scariest part is, both possibilities are equally plausible. Sarah and Maggie, two ways of seeing truth. Sarah and Maggie's reactions reveal how differently they understand truth. Sarah treats the sigil as evidence, something that can be traced, analyzed, and neutralized. Her concern isn't just catching the killer. It's preventing the town from tearing itself apart in the process. Maggie, on the other hand, understands the emotional weight of the symbol. She knows that symbols don't just represent ideas, they shape behavior. To Maggie, the sigil isn't just a clue. It's a psychological trigger. Together, they represent the show's core tension, logic versus belief. And the episode suggests that neither approach is enough on its own. Digging deeper, and why that's dangerous. When Sarah and Maggie decide they need to dig deeper into the killer's identity, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like risk, because the deeper they go, the more likely they are to uncover truths that Sanctuary isn't ready to face. This isn't just about who committed the crime. It's about what kind of town creates someone capable of it. The sigil forces the investigation inward, toward the culture, the beliefs, and the unspoken rules of Sanctuary itself. Harper and Lachlan. When truth changes love. While the investigation drives the plot, the emotional heart of the episode belongs to Harper. Now that she knows Lachlan's true identity, she can't look at him the same way. Not because her feelings disappear, but because they become complicated. This storyline isn't about romance. It's about trust after revelation. Can you still care for someone once you truly see who they are? And more importantly, what does that knowledge ask of you? The episode doesn't give Harper easy answers. It lets the discomfort linger. Just like real life, parallels between the plot and the emotions. What makes this episode work is how tightly its storylines mirror each other. The sigil exposes belief as dangerous. Lachlan's identity exposes intimacy as fragile. In both cases, truth doesn't heal. It destabilizes. Once something is known, it can't be unknown. And everyone in this episode is forced to live with that. The ending, no closure, only consequences. The episode doesn't end with a confrontation. It doesn't end with justice. It ends with awareness. Sarah and Maggie now know the killer is deliberate. Harper knows her feelings come with a cost. And Sanctuary feels more exposed than ever. The sigil lingers, not as a clue, but as a reminder that belief leaves marks, some of them visible, some of them permanent. What this episode is really about. At its core, this episode is about the cost of belief. Belief gives people identity and purpose, but it also gives them justification. The sigil represents that duality, sacred and threatening, meaningful and destructive. The episode asks whether belief can exist without becoming a weapon, and whether truth is always something we're meant to carry. Setting up the season, Episode 2 doesn't push the story forward, it tightens it. It prepares us for a season where answers come slowly, relationships strain under honesty, and belief continues to blur the line between protection and destruction. In Sanctuary, A Witch's Tale, magic has never been the most dangerous force. People are. And this episode makes that clearer than ever. Thank you for watching.